Today's video will be about employers, the influence of corporations on online services, and how their representatives have already gone beyond satire in terms of what they do to workers. How they hire workers for pennies, convincing them that they are working for themselves. We'll discuss why online services are more effective than any dystopia, and why real corporations seem more terrifying than functional cyberpunk ones. Gig economy is now understood as employment in which you connect to a digital platform and perform selective tasks using it, such as food delivery, house cleaning, and so on. In many ways, this concept overlaps with the sharing economy, where people essentially provide their property to others for short-term rent. They give rights to passengers on BlaBlaCar, or, for example, rent out apartments on Airbnb. Often, the owners of such companies continue to insist that they are sharing platforms, meaning they are designed for sharing, even when they are clearly designed for simple physical labor. How can such platforms be dangerous? No app or service can be completely protected from the insane and maniac. Services can be inhuman and deadly. Many convenient, everyday, familiar apps are in many ways worse than any techno-pessimist's fantasies. Most of us have very little influence over our own destinies. In a world where roles are predetermined, you can only get into high society by standing in manure for 7 years. You've been standing there for 10 years, wondering when these rivers of milk and honey will materialize, but all around you there is still nothing but shit. And then they tell you from above that you are not trying hard enough. It's not enough to simply be unique. You need to turn your uniqueness into a personal brand. You think that by creating an image and a legend for yourself, you'll rise to the level of the people you serve, but by doing so, you are only digging yourself a hole where you'll be forced to sell yourself. People trust a system that deceives them in the most sophisticated ways, and they even protect the scammers from whom they themselves suffer. Why do companies even hire people when they have robots that don't need sleep and are definitely not willing to form a union? The fact is, robots are quite imperfect. They can get stuck, can't swim, and so on. Besides, a robot won't come spend the money earned on a platform to buy products from that same platform. We constantly hear that technology is about to steal our poor people's jobs. The danger primarily comes from companies like Uber. These companies position themselves as tech companies, meaning they own neither a fleet nor a workforce, but only technology, apps and data storage. When we say tech company, we somehow assume high tech, but that's often not the case. It's simply not profitable for them to invest in truly high tech. Why do they need robots? Not to outperform and replace humans, but to keep them on their tone. Robots are simply bait that makes people work even faster. Companies hire people for short-term, low-skilled work without a contract, known as gig economy. Amazon has a service called Amazon Mechanical Turk, where people perform sometimes very simple, even elementary tasks for pennies, like solving captchas, deciphering receipts or recognizing image content. Employers who need such services find it easier to hire someone who can perform dull mechanical work like a robot than to invest in truly automating such tasks. Therefore, such services are elementary imitation artificial intelligence. Behind them, there is a living person masquerading as a robot. The problem for people wasn't that machines would displace them. The problem was that with the advent of machines, people could be judged by the standards of machines. Many work processed can't be automated due to the so-called Polanyi paradox, which states that sometimes we know more than we can articulate. This means that many skills can't be verbalized and fed to a program. Instead of valuing people for their creativity and not pushing them to use that creativity against machines, companies in the gig economy are simply using people to plug holes in machine operations. Entrepreneurs often don't solve problems, but rather pretend to solve them. They constantly fix a problem that in theory can be solved once and for all. In offices, instead of fixing the roof, they often tell the cleaner to change the bucket under the dripping area several times a day. The repairs won't cost the company anything at all. It's easier to say that this is part of the cleaner's duties, although such a responsibility naturally undermines the employee's self-esteem. Often, such jobs arise where something can be automated, but it's easier for the client to resort to simulating artificial intelligence. The imperfections of machines don't increase the value of people in the eyes of corporations. On the contrary, they devalue them. You may be skilled in many things, but without supporting documentation and experience in another job, your employer considers you worthy only of the most menial, low-paying jobs. Meanwhile, society insists that you chose this path yourself. In a ride-sharing company, you are not really an employee, you are more of a partner. You are not hired, you are added to the team, like a taxi driver for Uber, for example. When the company finds it profitable, it will present itself as a franchise owner with the right to dictate the rules to the driver. In other cases, when it suits her, she'll say, "We are just app developers, and the fact that some driver got beaten up on his road is his problem. He is a private entrepreneur, after all." An entire language was invented to blur the lines between hired labor, which is essentially what such work is, and personal business, which it clearly isn't. Not a uniform, because a uniform is immediately associated with work, but equipment. Not transportation or delivery, but a trip or a mission. Make it feel like you are playing a game. It may seem like just formulas, but in this case, language truly shapes reality. A company may hire an employee, but it doesn't promise them regular work. When we need you, we'll call you and pay you. Manipulating the meaning of words is always a boss advantage. Companies often benefit from playing dumb and pretending they don't understand the language, that they don't know the words work, overtime, and so on. For example, the government has taxed a pencil manufacturer. The company will claim that you are not pencils, but rather lead in a holder. Our new labor flexibility under the new capitalism. which should supposedly give people more time for self-development, actually drains time and energy. This impacts not only people's financial situation, but also their moral character. A delivery app will suggest harming your health by buying unhealthy food for the sake of stars or ratings in the app. The principles of the gig economy apply to social media as well, and platforms like YouTube and Facebook don't produce their own content. These companies rely on crowdsourcing. People who create content for these platforms can be banned at any time without explanation, because the platform's rules exist not for the platform itself, but only for its users. People are expected to simultaneously follow the platform's rules and break them for likes. The gig economy is a big capitalist laboratory where new principles of management, control, and operation are tested on people. The seeing of people can handle it. Are they ready for that? Great. So these principles can be implemented beyond the gig economy. In the attention economy and attempts to make money from views under these conditions, people who are already being experimented on are starting to experiment on themselves. So this episode has come to an end. If you liked the episode, give it a like, write comments, and click the bell to be first to know about the next episodes.